Hi, my name is Caleb Matlock, and the book I read is Black Fathers: An Invisible Presence in America. The book starts off talking about how during slavery, black families were together, but they were ultimately ripped apart. Families were ripped apart because they would snatch the fathers from the household or the mother from the household and separate the children, and they would get sold on the slave block and sold to different families, and sold to different families, and that would tear the family apart. Also, you would have where the slave women were impregnated by their masters, and that ultimately caused a father to be out of the household because the slave master was the father and the mother was a slave, and then her husband was sold to someone else in another farm, another state, or something like that. During the years following the Civil War, the two-parent household was very dominant, and many black families tried to keep together. So basically, after slavery came the Civil War, and a lot of black families were reunited as one, and that caused for the black family to flourish, basically, as a dynamic of them being together, but not economic-wise. So basically, families would try to look for work, but that wasn't possible because many people didn't want blacks working for them. So it would put a strain on the family even though they were together. You can say basically from that, the Great Migration came along. And from the Great Migration, you had many families or single men and women moving from the South to the North to find a better economic opportunity for themselves. And from that, many families were torn apart due to the fact that some families moved up north to find a better opportunity for themselves, their children, and basically just to try to better themselves as a black person. And from that, you had the Great Depression, and the Great Depression basically was a time in American history where America went through a very, very bad economic time, and from that, the black unemployment rate was extremely high. After slavery, during the Great Migration came, and the Great Migration was a time in American history where many African Americans moved from the South to the North for better economic opportunities. During the Great Migration, basically, it tore some families apart because you had some families who would leave behind some in the South just so they can go find work in the North, and they would try to come back together, but that sometimes didn't happen. And after the Great Migration came the Great Depression. And during the Great Depression, that was a time in American history where America as a whole suffered economically, but blacks were at an all-time high for unemployment and everything else. So basically, it can be like 1% of the population could be employable, but it would represent 33% of unemployment, which is very disproportionate when it comes to unemployment rates, and it doesn't even show exactly how that's possible. So basically, the war on drugs was a way to destroy the black community. It would basically put for small crimes of having drugs for personal use, and it would make it amped up to be it was for distribution and manufacturing instead of it just being for a minor possession charge. And it would basically put a black man away for a very long time, even though it was for a small amount. So during the war on drugs, they would amp up drug charges to make sure they put black men away for longer periods of time, even though the crime wasn't as severe as what it was. And this right here ultimately also destroyed the black household because now, as a result of the war on drugs, 1 in 3 men are victims to the criminal justice system, and they're either in jail, in prison, on probation, or on parole due to the things that the war on drugs had on the effect, due to the factors the war on drugs had on the black household. As a result of the war on drugs, black men became unemployable because they had criminal records, and even if they weren't affected by the war on drugs, some of them resorted to selling drugs or committing crimes to make money, which made the cycle of mass incarceration continue, which kept the black man out of the household. Now, in present times, there are stereotypes that black fathers are unloving, absent, not present, or just don't care about their kids. In present day, media portrays black fathers as being absent, abusive, or drug dealers from the household. And this basically shows that even though black men are trying to better themselves and become more present in the household, there will always be a stigma that black men don't want to be in the household, or they just don't care about their responsibilities. In the book, Black Fathers and Invisible Presence in America, the authors did a study basically with young men on how their lives were affected due to the fact that they didn't have a father. The age group that the study was done on, they were 15 to 17. 2 of them were fathers, the other 15 were not, and basically they talked about how they didn't want the same lifestyle that they grew up with, even though if they were to produce children, it would more than likely be that they would be absent from the child's life due to the circumstances that they had when they were growing up. In the study, some of the boys talked about how they wouldn't want their children to grow up like that, and that they would try their hardest to be in the household. And others talked about how some did have kids and they tried to be in their child's life, but different factors basically prohibited them from being in the child's life, such as the mother withheld the child, or they couldn't support the child, or they had multiple women pregnant at once. The absence of black men in the household is not an inherent trait, but social conditions that were put into place during slavery and on to present day. In my opinion, the myth black fathers being absent in the household doesn't hold to be true. In some cases, you can have where the father doesn't have to physically be present in the household with the child, but they can start participating in the child's life by means of co-parenting, showing up to sporting events or anything that's significant in the child's life, or just being there to support children in their decisions. Also, for children who don't seem to have the opportunity to have a positive male role model in their life, they can go through mentorship programs to where they will be able to gain a relationship to have a positive male role model in their life. For instance, for a young man to have a mentor in his life, it can show him what it's like to have a positive male role model and show him the ways to be positive in his life and make better decisions in his future. And for a female, it can give her the chance to build a positive relationship with a man so she can help make better decisions when she becomes older and is ready to start a family, or etc. We must fight the stereotype that in order for a black father to be present in a child's life, he must be married to the mother. Some situations happen to where the parents are better off as friends to do what's best for their child. Even though the parents aren't married, that doesn't mean that they still can't raise their child in a healthy, nurturing, and loving environment. Just some situations happen out to be where the parents can't be married, but media and other perspectives from the outside world need to be changed so that it can prove that just because 2 people aren't married, particularly black couples aren't married, that does not mean that they can't raise a child in a happy, nurturing, and loving environment.